Greek Art Styles by Zoe Trinka. The Greeks excelled at creating artwork, and they were the first culture that found out how to perfectly sculpt the human body form. Greek art progressed over the centuries. Their main goal was to sculpt the perfect human form. The Greeks also sculpted their gods. So in doing so, they wanted to make their gods look more like them or their star athletes. The Greeks had a few different styles they went through over the centuries. The different styles were geometric, archaic, classical, and Hellenistic. I'll be going over the different styles and how they progressed over time. The geometric period was from 900 to 700 BCE. The Greeks were getting their inspiration from the early Egyptian forms. The artwork from this time tends to be quite true to the period's name. The Greeks did focus on the representations of shapes rather than the realistic human body form. During this time, there were not a lot of larger scale sculptors, but small bronze figures. Some examples of this period are the seated male figure. This was around 750 BCE, and it's bronze. These little figurines are made of triangle torsos with cylinder-like arms. The legs have a little bit of naturalistic shape to them. The longer arms mirror the lengths of the legs. These would be votive offerings to the gods. Man and Centaur, this is from 750 BCE, and it is bronze. The two figurines here have the same long arms as the seated figure, but the one has his arms in a continuous line going to the centaur. Both these figures have beards, which symbolizes maturity. The statue represents the conflict between the centaurs and humans. In the end, it shows the human ending the conflict by killing the centaur. Going into the archaic style, the geometric style still appears in their artwork. The archaic style is going to be from 650 to 480 BCE. In this period, the Greeks are really going to start to explore new things and develop more in politics, culture, and create the Greek alphabet. Their new sculptures have quite a bit of resemblance to the Egyptian sculptures, but the Greeks are going to put their own twist on it. The first one that is really popular is going to be Standing Youth. Standing Youth, or known as Kouros, is from 600 BCE and he's marble. Standing Youth was the first early exchange between the Greeks and Egyptians. You can tell this by the rigid stance and the 1 foot forward. In this, they are creating negative space, making it more lifelike instead of trying to make it last forever like the Egyptians. Unlike the Egyptians, the Greeks liked full nudity for their male figures because for them it was a sense of pride. The Greeks' ultimate goal was making it realistic. They were using some of the geometric style within this figure through the hair, torso, and knees. These statues were often found standing at graves, temples, and public spaces. There were quite a bit of these found all over Europe. The next is the West Undying Warriors. These are from 480 BCE, and they're marble. The West Undying Warriors are a good example of archaic style going to classic style. The west side shows the archaic style. The warrior here is smiling as he has a metal rod going through his abdomen, but he's enjoying death. This is more of a humorous image. The west warrior is almost acting. His rigid posture really shows the archaic style still in place. Moving on to the east side, you can tell that they are starting to really go to the classical style, just by the fact there's more emotion in the warrior's face and position. He is grimacing, worrying about his own morality. He is trying to get up and keep fighting for Rome, even though his body has given up. By looking at these two sculptures, we can definitely tell the difference, that there is a difference here between these two, classic versus archaic. Classical style is one of the more popular styles that we know today of the Greeks. The classical period lasted from 480 to 323 BCE. It came after the Greeks defeated the Persians in 479 BC. The Met had a good comment on how the artwork really changed. Greek artists of the 5th and 4th centuries BCE attained a manner of representation that conveys a vitality of life as well as a sense of permanence, clarity, and harmony. The sculptor Polykleitos of Argos figured out how to perfectly sculpt the muscles of a male body. Polykleitos came up with a formula for a system of proportions that achieved the artistic effect that Greeks were looking for. In this time period, the Greeks believed that gods would take human form, so they kept their bodies in excellent shape. The better you looked, the more godlike you were. In this time, the Greeks developed contrapposto, which is when the human figure is standing with most of its weight on one foot so that its shoulder and arms twist off axis from the hips and legs. They created this to show figures more relaxed in their stance. The first time we saw this was in Kritos Boy. The Kritos Boy was about 480 BC and he was made of marble. The Kritos Boy is in a very balanced pose. This would suggest that he had a calm and relaxed state of mind. This is the first example of contrapposto we saw. It's possibly that there were bronze sculptures made with this concept, but they have all been melted down. Kritos Boy definitely moves from all the rigid and stiff poses of the archaic style. This sculpture was the first truly realistic body. The Greeks were the first culture to create the first realistic form. In order to create this perfect form, the Greeks would measure Olympic athletes for correct proportions. Unfortunately, the Greeks got bored of the realistic body and wanted something more exaggerated, such as the rice warriors. The rice warriors were from 450 BCE. They were bronze, bone, glass eyes, and silver teeth. These sculptures have contrapposto concept in them as well. The details in the sculpture are so well portrayed, but these bodies are so exaggerated. They are not really stuck at all. The exaggerated abs, longer legs, and vertebrae dividing the body into quarters. Moving on to the last style of the Greeks, this was known as the Hellenistic period. It lasted from 323 to 31 BCE. The style came right after the death of Alexander the Great. People were leaving the ideas of Alexander behind and going to try different things. The term Hellenistic means expansion of the Greek influence. In the Hellenistic period, sculptures became more naturalistic as well as expressive. The Greeks wanted to explore human emotion at this time, such as people suffering, sleeping, or in old age. A lot of famous sculptures came from this time period and style. Aphrodite of Knossos by Praxiteles, 350 BCE, and it's marble. This is one of the first artworks that moved from the classical style to the more of the Hellenistic style. Praxiteles created one of the first life-size nude representations of a woman form that's godlike. There are over 50 copies that still exist to this day. These sculptures of Aphrodite were extremely popular because of her beauty. Aphrodite Pan in Euros in 100 BCE, it's marble. This was a parody meant to be humorous to its viewers. This is the Greeks trying new things. Instead of creating images of just their gods and perfect beings, they're going more for art's sake. This is Aphrodite trying to fend off Pan with her sandal, as Euros is encouraging him to keep starting trouble. This is a perfect example of the Hellenistic style, with it being humorous and natural. The Old Drunkard in the 2nd century BC, it's marble. The Old Drunkard is from the Hellenistic period, and in my opinion it's one of the best depictions of suffering and sadness from this period. Unfortunately, the original copy of the old woman has been lost, but there have been 2 copies saved from the Romans. This sculpture shows quite a bit of the human emotion and makes the viewer feel sympathetic. In this, the viewer can observe that the woman is carrying on because she must not finding joy in life anymore. Her spirits have been broken from poverty and hard labor. After covering the 4 styles, geometric, archaic, classical, and Hellenistic, one should be able to identify the sculptures a little bit easier. The Greek artwork reflected their society, and it really shows the importance and accomplishments of them as human beings. The Greeks were very influential on a lot of different cultures, and they still have an influence to this day. After going over all these styles, my favorite had to be the Hellenistic period. I liked how well they portrayed the human emotion as well as how naturalistic the sculptures came to be. It was very interesting seeing how they progressed over the centuries, especially seeing the sculptures change throughout time.